Reddit, what is your family's dark secret? Remember to like and subscribe. Enjoy the video. Grandfather tried to axe murder my dad. Cousin is a porn star. By this time, I'm sure you've heard this all before. God, I love Reddit. This guy's dad almost got axe murdered, and y'all asking for the porn. Grandparents on my stepmother's side paid a hitman to take out my father. Luckily the guy had morals. He met my father, and after talking to him a bit ended up telling him what he was originally there for, and that he was going to return the money. What is the hitman, lol? A good man no doubt, but I don't think hitman should be his profession. Birth mum was a prostitute. Adoptive mum tried to kill my dad with rat poison. Grandmother was a thief. Her brother was killed by their father. What are you, a character from Game of Thrones? My grandfather's dad tried to join the Nazis, but his family moved him to Canada to prevent it. Greatest you will not pass, go and collect $20. My granddad was into dating students before it became something people lost their job over. That's how our family got started. He taught, then gave extra credit to my grandmother. Great grandmother and a brothel. Great grandfather was murdered by brothers who decided they were both in love with my great grandmother. Great grandfather was in the KKK. The KKK was quoted in the newspaper as saying something like, "We take care of our own." The brothers were never seen or heard from again. Edit. Brothers were two siblings, unrelated to my family, and not members of the KKK. I don't know how they planned to divide time with great grandmother. Also, when my grandfather helped lay out my great grandfather for burial, 9 bullets fell out of my great grandfather. Well, damn. My uncle was investigated for the Green River killings. Years later he was investigated for the Spokane prostitute murders. He was good friends with Yates, who was found guilty, and his saliva was found on a beer can near a dumping site. When I was a little girl, my mom told me to never get in his car if he tried to pick me up. Funny enough, he sells life insurance. What was your uncle doing that made him get suspected of being every serial killer in the Northwest, lol? Probably killing people. He's super creepy. My parents' cousin was a prostitute in the early 1990s, and when she died from STDs in 2000, my mother inherited $9,373 from prostitution. She spent it on raising me, ironically. My great-great-grandma went out to dinner with her husband one night. Her husband thought she was looking at other guys and brought her to a hotel room nearby and slit her throat. He left her to die, but she survived and then escaped and left him. We didn't find this out until a few years ago through an old newspaper. I was like, okay, WTF. Escalated quickly. My family was smuggling diamonds in the Apeldoorn area of the Netherlands from the late 1800s up until World War II. They got pretty rich off it too, until the Nazis invaded and took most of them into concentration camps. My great grandfather, while on the trains to a camp, convinced himself and several others to jump from the trains. As they did, they were gunned down by Nazi soldiers, and my great grandfather was one of the only survivors. Before the days of Ancestry.com and whatnot, my cousin and his wife went to Ireland with idyllic intentions of tracing our family heritage. They never spoke of it again, until years later, when they admitted it repeatedly dead-ended at mental hospitals and jails, and they got so discouraged they quit. My grandfather's uncle fell in love with an underage girl. He got drafted into the war and had to leave. When he came home he found out she had died. He dug up her grave and kept her dead body in his bathtub. We just don't talk about it, and I've never met that side of my family. Edit. First off, holy shit, I did not expect my comment to take off as much as it did. I went to bed and woke up this morning to a million emails. Secondly, I called my mom to see if I could get some answers to all of your questions. Turns out the guy was actually my grandmother's cousin. He was a Marine in the Korean War. Apparently when he got back he was told she had died. My mom has no idea how old she was or what she died of. He became so distraught he went and dug up her grave, put her in his bathtub, and kept trying to revive her. He was discovered only a couple days later. My mom says it was a small town, and once her freshly dug up grave was discovered they just put 2 and 2 together. No one talks about it. Only my mom, obviously. Cradle to grave robber. My grandmother had an affair with my aunt's high school boyfriend's father. It became very awkward when my aunt married said boyfriend and had a kid with him. Why? Because my grandmother married said boyfriend's father. My aunt now has a kid with her stepbrother. That's oddly hilarious actually. One of my aunties was a very ill woman like oxygen. To get out of the chair, going upstairs is a 1 a week thing if lucky. Her son is a When she refused to pay his drug debt off for the nth time because she had no more money, he poured petrol all over the house and threatened to burn her to death. The fumes were enough for her to pass out. He panicked, took a handful of pills, then panicked at that decision and called himself an ambulance. Didn't even mention his mum. Police turned up with the paramedics, arrested him and took her in the ambulance. I disowned him instantly. My great-grandfather was a Christian Scientist minister. They believe that the mind can cure the body, and he told the family of a girl with diabetes, a treatable disease, to pray the sickness away. The girl soon died, and the girl's father killed my great-grandfather in a murderous rage. I knew a pastor who said a spiritual solution to a physical issue is foolish, and a physical solution to a spiritual issue is foolish. It's a shame some people reject medicine. A super distant uncle in my family used to get in a lot of trouble with cops. My nan and great aunt used to hide him, once hiding him in a freezer while cops searched the house. One day he ended up kidnapping an ambassador, successfully ransomed him off, tried escaping the country via boat, but the captain realized he was a crook and tried to take him to the cops. Distant uncle instead holds captain at gunpoint and dives off the boat several kilometers off land. Police never found him and assumed he drowned. Decades later my nan got a letter from him confirming to all of us he was alive and well. You could make that story into a movie, LMAO. My grandparents swapped spouses. My grandmother on my mother's side had an affair with my grandfather on my father's side. Everyone got divorced, and then my grandfather on my mother's side fell in love and married my grandmother on my father's side. Family reunions were fun. My head hurts thinking of the potential drama complications this has caused. My grandfather died in 1946, before my dad was even born. We were always told he drove his truck into a ditch while drunk, fell asleep, and asphyxiated when the tailpipe got clogged with mud. He was in his early 30s at the time. Well, I got into genealogy a couple of years back and found a bunch of records and newspaper articles about the incident. Turns out Grandpa wasn't alone in the truck. He was with an underage girl, less than half his age, who also died alongside him. Obviously, this was not my grandmother. The newspapers didn't say it explicitly, but there was heavy insinuation that there was some side of the road romance happening when the fumes apparently overtook both of them. I still haven't told my dad what I found. Not sure I ever will. My grandfather went away to fight in Vietnam, and when he came back my grandma was pregnant with my mom. We never knew who her real dad was. Damn, I can never help feeling sorry for vets that have to deal with that. Whatever happened between your grandmother and grandfather after that? They stayed together for a number of years, until my mom was around 10, then they finally divorced. As far as I know they have nothing to do with one another. My grandfather broke it off with his first wife because she got knocked up by my grandfather's brother, who was / is also married, while my grandfather was deployed during the Malayan emergency. He had stress and anxiety issues the entire time I knew him, and I know it cost a part of himself to forgive his brother to keep the family together. The worst part? She named the kid after my grandfather, tried to pass him off as a junior. The kid is now in his 50s and is in prison, selling prison art. My dad's family is messed up. His cousin told her husband that if he didn't stop smoking she'd divorce him. So instead of quitting he lied about having cancer. When he went to the hospital he told her he was getting treatment, but instead smoked at the hospital. This all happened before I was born, but yeah, her husband lied about having cancer for almost a decade. My dad is the only normal one in the family. My uncle, the Protestant minister, was doing wealth management on the side. Turned out to be other people's wealth into his pockets. Got caught and killed himself before they arrested him. I found out that my high school best friend is my cousin. My parents were freaking out when I brought her over. Not as much as when my dad was best friends with her dad in the 70s and his dad panicked because of the resemblance. Turns out granddad had an affair with her gran around 9 months before he was born. No one in their family knows, and only a handful in ours. Were you all being incestuous or something? Why did your best friend coming over bring such a fuss? I suppose it was the possibility that their kid was dating their cousin accidentally. My great-grandmother was married to her first husband, an Italian mobster in New York, in the early 1920s. They had 4 kids. In 1928, 6 years after they were married, she disappeared and no one in the family knew what happened to her. They all quietly assumed her husband had her killed, as it was known he was very abusive to her. Nope. She ran off with my great-grandfather. They moved to Philadelphia and had changed their last names. They were always very secretive about their past. No one knew the original family names or where they had come from. Until I took a DNA test and matched with a third cousin that was descended from her first set of children. Her original 4 children were sent to orphanages because the first husband couldn't take care of them. It was a big surprise for both families and some very hurt feelings for the children she had abandoned. They are in their 90s but it affected them their entire lives. My great aunt had a second child and gave it up for adoption because she was a newly single woman and didn't think she could provide for both kids. This apparently caused a lot of drama in our family back in the 70s and people stopped talking to each other over it. My generation never heard a single word of any of this. Then, one day, my mom calls me to tell me about my new cousin. I was baffled and figured someone had a kid. Nope. That little girl that was given up for adoption was now in her 40s and hired a private investigator to find her biological family. She's since been assimilated into the family and I see her regularly at family events. Hey, at least there's a happy ending. My mom's parents were uncle and niece. Her dad married his brother's daughter. Their family was on the East Coast and they ran away together to California. They had 2 kids, my mom and her older brother. All of us are a product of incest. My grandma's ex-boyfriend got put in jail for murder because he killed a dude that also liked her. Also, she and my granddad would have quickies during TV commercial breaks. I've been waiting for this thread cause one just found this out over Christmas. Dad's ex-wife had 2 kids from her previous marriage. One of them, the younger one, was born deaf because her ex-husband shoved her down the stairs during pregnancy. Came to find out that he did not do that. He was the nicest man ever. She lied because a deaf kid is actually her cousin's. She f***ed her cousin when he was staying at their house for a bit and had an inbred kid with health defects. She hid this from her husband. This all came to light when the older brother, born from her husband, no health defects, told his dad that he accidentally walked in on mom banging the cousin. Dad got a paternity test. Confirmed it. Deaf brother still doesn't know. Praying no one buys him a 23andMe for Christmas ever.